Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a special Sour Casuals Weekend Edition. I'm your host, Josh, and of course, why else are we here but to talk about the Desert Perpetual raid, the old D&P. We're ready to talk about it. I have done my clear. Almost have 2 clears on it. I think I was just missing the Wyvern from having 2 clears. So I'm ready to talk about it. We had a lot of questions on this one. Of course, we're going to talk about the raid. We're going to talk about the loot table. We're going to answer your questions that y'all have. And then we're going to, get into the raid rankings like always. But I do want to talk a little bit about the contest mode of it all. Contest mode it was rough this year. This go around, it was really rough. SE was pretty rough. This one was pretty rough too, which is in stark contrast to Root of Nightmares, Crota's End, Deepstone, once people figured out you needed Lament. Once, the raid was beaten without Lament, and then people figured out that Lament would hit Atrax pretty hard. It felt like the last 2, Salvation's Edge and now especially Desert Perpetual, have returned us to the contest modes of old. To even before it was called contest, the raid races of old. Really, it feels like it's returning us to that. But there's been a lot of controversy around this raid launching, and the whole reason that I'm bringing this up right now is because the Destiny 2 team had to come out and actually say something about the rampant cheating that went on during the contest weekend. For those of you who are unaware, about 300 some odd teams cleared, and I would wager to say that people can pretty definitively prove that probably about half to 2/3, about 50-60% of those teams either had cheaters on them or fully cheated. And the thing is, they didn't go do it and get worlds first. The ones who tried to do it and be worlds first got spotted right away and obviously banned within seconds. People were at the final boss like 20 minutes into the raid. The thing is, you can't do it without clearing the encounters. You have to do the mechanics at least once. So what people were doing was sitting there and waiting for the strats to come out, and then they would run in, they'd do the strat, and then they would just cheese their way to it, because the boss has to die. When you go and do your net limiting or whatever, and you can look for like specific weapons, like people using duality. Fourth Horseman used to be a really good indicator of it, but these days it's duality, and I believe Lawrence Driver, I think Glory is the other one, are pretty good indicators. Especially you're seeing people with like 500 kills and nobody else with like anything, and they've got like all the damage too. Like that's a pretty good indicator you cheated. I was hearing from a friend of mine who's pretty plugged into the raid scene, who was saying that people were paying like $500 for day 1 contest cheat clears, which is wild. But the D2 team had to come out and say something today, because man, this is embarrassing. This is really embarrassing that it had to even get to this point. I want to find the exact tweet that they sent out. It's in my DMs. We are investigating reports of cheating with fire teams who cleared Desert Perpetual contest mode, breaking the code of conduct and or cheating to complete contest difficulty or any other activity is a bannable offense, and players benefiting from cheating can also be subject to punishment. I am firmly in the camp of, if you were part of a cheating fire team, that 1, there's no way you didn't know, but 2, anybody in those fire teams should get a lifetime ban from the game. I don't really care how many people it pisses off. If you cheated to get a contest clear, you should be banned. And I hope that this incident is what gets Bungie to finally take action on actual cheaters, because it's run rampant in Steam Crucible for you. I mean, it runs rampant in Crucible, period, but to me, it's much more prevalent on Steam versus on console. And the fact that action has never truly been taken there, like you'll get some bans here and there, but I mean, the same people fly around with unlimited Wither Horde and, flying around in the skybox every weekend, and they don't get banned, or, they just go make a new account. I don't like that has continued to persist, and they have not figured out a way around that yet. I just don't know what you can possibly do to require it at this point. Um, so that's a problem. First of all, that's an issue. If this is what finally gets them to take it, because the Destiny raid races are something that is promoted on Twitter. That is something that, I mean, they were partnered with Rivals for a while. They give out emblems as part of it. If you watch it on Twitch, the fact that this is now becoming a thing, because this happened during SE also, and most of those cheaters, to my knowledge, were not caught or kicked out of the game or anything like that. This is so prevalent though that like you have almost 60% of your clears were cheat clears. I do not agree with the calls to redo contest mode. I do not think that, okay, just because people cheated does not mean we need a redo of contest. Like, let me tell you something. People cheating does not mean you were going to clear. Okay? That had no bearing on you clearing. So, like, I don't know what you're crying about. You know, to me, it sounds like, you know, hey, if you couldn't do it in 48 hours, I'm sorry, you don't deserve it. You really don't. You don't deserve it. So yeah, I think it's already more than generous extending it to be a 48-hour contest weekend. I think that's been more than fair. And of course that happened by accident with VOW because of all the crashing. And then they just kind of kept it after that. I don't particularly have a problem with the 48-hour mode, but like, man, if you couldn't do it in 48 hours, what's a makeup day going to do for you? Like, yeah, you might be better at the mechanics now, but you couldn't do it at the exact time. This isn't an issue like what we had with Sundered Doctrine. I said this on the last Tower Casuals. This is not an issue like with Sundered, where an entire platform did not have access to their online services. PSN was legitimately down for like 16 hours. This is not a situation like that. So now, do I think the raid should have come out? No, I think the raid should have been delayed by like a week or two at least. I made the case last night that I don't think that, you know, GCX should have any bearing on releasing a raid. I know that's going to be a controversial opinion with some people, but in my opinion, like, a con should never take priority over the health of the game. I also think the fact that you still have PS4 and PS5 crashes happening, the Xbox crashes barely got sorted out in time. We had somebody write in yesterday saying they're still having problems with the campaign on Xbox. But it's a brand new gear system. We're in Armor 3.0. It's a brand new system. It's a brand new leveling system. Their rally flags aren't working properly. Sprint isn't working properly. The raid never should have released when it did. The solution that I've had, that I've talked with some friends, is that honestly they should have recognized that. They should have recognized that before they even launched the expansion and said, hey, we're having some issues in our testing that will require them to have any testers at all anymore. But we're noticing some issues in testing, and we need to figure out what's doing the root cause of this. We're going to delay the raid by a week or two, like a week and a half, 2 weeks. We're going to give you trials back. We're going to bring trials back as a pursuit, or we're going to move Arms Week up. You know, maybe you punt the raid the next week because you don't want to interfere with GCX. Great, bring trials back, bring in Arms Week early, maybe bring heavy metal back. I don't know, like, bring some sort of event back. Maybe not heavy metal. Heavy metal sucks. But maybe you bring some event forward. Yeah, maybe you start Solstice early. Maybe you just pull the trigger and you activate Solstice early. I don't know. Maybe you do an impromptu Iron Banner immediately. You know, you realize that you got to do that. I know Iron Banner's not coming back because of story reasons, but maybe you do something like that. Maybe I don't know what else you do. Maybe extend Ride in the Nine another week. Like, even though I know that's last year's content at this point, maybe you do that. Like, there's a few different avenues you could have gone here. And I mean, I think with all that being said, maybe you shouldn't have gone and fixed Encore. Maybe you should let people just farm it up, because the raid also is not dropping appropriate loot, not raid appropriate loot, which is the next thing I want to get into. I think that when we talk about the raid, like, I really would have liked to have started with positives, because I do think this is an awesome raid, as evidenced by where I have it in my rankings. This is an awesome raid. It's one of my favorite final bosses, but the loot situation is a mess here. It's a mess, and it's not like the loot itself is not necessarily bad. I want to be clear on that. What is bad, however, is the level that it's all dropping at. We were told that tier 3 armor was going to be, equivalent to kind of what we have with like Artifice armor. Pre-Edge of Fate. I think it was Artifice armor. It may have been fully Masterwork regular armor, but it would be equivalent to that. I want to know why that's not your base point for what you're dropping in a raid. It needs to be tier 3. I think tier 3 is where it should be dropping. And I think that doing the feats challenge should bump it up to give you guaranteed tier 4 when you run it after that, with a small chance to drop it at tier 5. I think that's what another triumph should have been, as like guarantee, or giving you a slight chance at a guaranteed tier 5. You know, give you like a 5% chance of getting a tier 5 drop, tier 5 armor drop per encounter completion or something for a week. Give you like, I don't know, maybe not 5%, maybe give you like a 15% chance if you run the whole raid of getting a tier 5 armor drop at the end of the week. That's something I would personally do to change the loot situation, but let's talk about what drops here, because I actually think that some pretty good stuff drops in this raid. You have Antedate, which is the Arc SMG. You have Intercalary, which is the Stasis auto rifle. You have Finite Maybe, the Solar Fusion. You have When and Where, the Stasis rocket launcher, and you have Opaque Hourglass, which is the the crossbow. You also have a Lance Ephemeral, which is the Strand Sniper, and of course, I almost called it Oblivion, Whirling Ovation, which is the Strand Exotic rocket launcher that you get from Final. So let's go ahead and go through the loot table, because I want to start with the weapons that I did get, which I came away with the auto, I came away with the sniper, and I came away with the crossbow. In terms of armor, in terms of weapons, of course, I did not come away with the rocket or the SMG, because why should I get what I want? This AR is nasty. I like this AR a lot so far. My problem is 600s are in a kind of weird spot for me, but I actually think slower RPM ARs are probably a little bit better right now, unless you've got that really rad new 720 that has kinetic tremors on it. But Intercalary, I like this. I don't love the roll I got. I don't think it's bad, but Target Lock and Built to Blast. I do like Built to Blast. I think it's good in a season that's really emphasizing Woven Mail and Frost Armor. Built to Blast, for those who don't know, gain aim assist, stability, and flinch resistance while you have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or the Void Overshield active. And of course, we all know what Target Lock does. I do actually like that on an AR. I think that's a lot of fun. I do think that the raid trait is pretty wild. I think the raid trait is awesome, and I think that's part of why the SMG is so good, right? Because frame of reference is the origin trait here. And final blows with this weapon temporarily grant increased damage, reload speed, and range. This effect is frozen in time while the weapon is stowed. I think that's fucking rad if you're switching between that SMG and a sniper, for instance. I think that's an awesome combination. It's an awesome combo. I really love that. Or, you're swapping over your heavy and then you're swapping back to it. I think that that's really, really good. And I think it's going to be really good in solo content. I think anything with that trait. But the SMG, I think, is where that shines. I think it really, really shines with it. So big fan. I like Intercalary. I don't know if I love it, but I like it. I think it's a very solid AR, and I like the aesthetic of these weapons. The weapons really do remind me of the Leviathan weapons in a large way. But I got the Strand Sniper as another drop, Lance Ephemeral. I got this with Fourth Times and Deconstruct. I don't know if I love Deconstruct on a sniper. I don't know how I feel about Deconstruct. I think Deconstruct is kind of wild. For me, I think Deconstruct works better on something like a bow. I actually think it works really well on a bow, because damage with primary ammo or against constructs provides additional progress. I do like that. Constructs includes barricades, turrets, stasis crystals, and other objects created in the field. It's fine. Deconstruct is fine. It's not my first choice for a perk. And in that column especially, I don't know how I feel about it. I want to go ahead and pull up the perk pool on this, though, because I want to talk about a couple of these. In that first column, you can get Hatchling, Fourth Times, Envious, Lead from Gold, Built to Blast, Snapshot, and Rewind rounds. In that second one, you can get Bait and Switch. We all love Bait and Switch. Tear, Redirection, Killing Tally, Closing Time, Deconstruct, and Elemental Honing. Personally, I do really love Fourth Times. I think Fourth Times is really awesome. If you get Fourth Times together with bait and switch, maybe. I like that. I like it with closing time also. Um, but I think that first column of perks is where it really shines. You've got fourth times, you've got envious, you've got lead from gold, and you've got built to blast. I think all the snapshot sites, rewind rounds. I think that's just awesome. That's a solid first column of perks to me. Going back to the AR for a second, wanted to pull that up and pull up what you can get on it. You can get Headstone, Built to Blast, Demolitionist, Rewind, Subsistence, Auto Loading, and Strategist. And then that second column, you get Rhyme Stealer, Target Lock, Master of Arms, Desperate Measures, One for All, Onslaught, and Binary Orbit. You can get Onslaught, or you can get Master of Arms on so much stuff in this expansion, which I think is good. I like Master of Arms as a perk, and it's not as busted as it used to be on Gen 1 Recluse, right? For me, I mean, I think Built to Blast, Rewind Round, Subsistence, I think all those are good. Of course, I like Master of Arms. I like Target Lock on an AR. I love One for All on ARs. Onslaught, love it on ARs. Also, if you're listening to this, go to Zur, go get that Subsistence Onslaught Summoner. That thing shreds. It shreds, and I just said that 600s are in a really weird place, but that gun shreds. Other weapons that I got to drop. The only other weapon I got was the crossbow. I got 4 of these bad boys between the 2 runs. And I don't know that I love them. I don't know that I love them. I did get Bolt Scavenger, which when you recover a bolt increases reload and handling. I got Master of Arms on that same roll. I think Master of Arms actually might be really good because, you've been doing damage with our weapons, then you swap to this and you fire off a bolt. That could be really good. You can get Sympathetic Arsenal, Field Prep, Firefly, Rolling Storm, Bolt Scavenger, Wellspring, and Impulse Amplifier. And then you can get, in that second column, Vorpal, Firing Line, Master of Arms, Binary Orbit, Frenzy, Elemental Honing, Dragonfly. I think I really like Firing Line Impulse on this. As my 2 perks, those are the ones that I kind of like, to be honest. Don't know. I need to go play with this. I got a few rolls here. I got one with Field Prep Firing Line. I got one with Wellspring Binary Orbit, which I don't think Binary Orbit's bad necessarily, but it wouldn't be my first pick. And then Sympathetic Arsenal and Vorpal. None of those rolls really light me on fire. That first one's probably the one I'm going to play with the most, with Bolt Scavenger, Master of Arms. But Field Prep Firing Line could be a lot of fun with this. I'm interested to see the evolution of how this gets handled as a DPS weapon. I still have my personal doubts about how this is going to shake out. But overall, it's not bad. I want to pull up the rest of the weapons, the ones I have not been fortunate enough to get, especially Antedate. I really want to talk about Antedate. Very excited to talk about this one. Let's talk about Antedate for a second. So Antedate, this sucker can roll with Rangefinder, Auto-Loading Holster, Strategist, Rolling Storm, Zen Moment, Fire or Dragonfly, Rewind Rounds, and then Target Lock, Desperate Measures, Master of Arms, Jolting Feedback, Frenzy, Paracausal Affinity, and To the Pain. I personally really, really love the idea of, like, I like Rangefinder, I like Rewind Rounds, I like Dragonfly, Rolling Storm. I like all those in that first column. In that second column, I'm really eyeballing Jolting Feedback, Master of Arms, and Target Lock. Target Lock's going to be disgusting on this thing. It's a 900 RPM. I really like it. This is the gun that I'm chasing currently. I will be chasing Antedate. I'm extremely excited about Antedate right now. Everybody I've talked to who's gotten it is just like, yeah, this thing shreds. I heaped a lot of praise on the Strand gun that, or on the Strand SMG that Zavala has this week is the Vanguard requisition. This thing is an absolute monster. Other weapons that we have Finite Maybe. Talk about Finite Maybe for a second. Perk pool on this one. This is interesting. This is a fusion rifle with Heel Clip. Heel Clip, Ambitious Assassin, Demolitionist, Lead from Gold, Under Pressure, Reconstruction, Incandescent, and of course Discord, Bait and Switch, controlled burst, desperate measures, reservoir burst, uh, burning ambition, and successful warm up. I think burning ambition and incandescent is just going to be fun on any weapon for a while. I think that's really cool, especially if you're using this as an alternate DPS. Maybe you're on tractor duty and then you're trying to just like spam this for damage. I think that could be a really good combo. I think heal clip could be really fun on this. I don't know how I love it on a fusion. It could be interesting though. Of course, lead from gold, always a solid choice. I would say that reconstruction is another one that I really, really like. Reconstruction is good. Reconstruction is a good one here. Reconstruction with burning ambition could be one also to me. Because incandescent, you have to be defeating the target, right? So if you're using this for sustained damage, I really like the idea of lead from gold, under pressure, or reconstruction, and then burning ambition, probably my number one choice in the other column. That, I like reservoir burst, I like controlled burst. I think controlled burst is another good one for DPS options. Of course, bait and switch is a good one, but I always forget to proc bait and switch personally. I'm really, really bad about remembering that. I think the other highlight of this suite is the when and where. This thing gives major sins of the past vibes. For those of you who ran Leviathan back in Vanilla D2, this gives a major sins of the past vibes to me. You can get reconstruction, demo, overflow, field prep, impulse, clown cartridge, and chill clip, along with explosive light, elemental honing, bipod, desperate measures, bait and switch, surrounded, and Reaper's Tithe. Reaper's Tithe is a new perk that I really like, but I don't know if I love this on a rocket launcher. Now, this on that new Arc Mountaintop is fun. That's fun, because Reaper's Tithe, for those of you who don't know, multiple simultaneous final blows queue up a stacking damage buff. Timer starts on the next weapon fire. Final blows extend this timer. I really like Reaper's Tithe. I would like to see Reaper's Tithe on, SMGs also. I think that would be really fun. So, I don't know how you do that, but that would be really fun. On this one, I'm personally eyeing, I always like Impulse, but I would probably be eyeing Chill Clip or Overflow. Maybe I'm eyeing Reconstruction. I think any of those 3 or 4 would be great. Bait and Switch is probably the number one choice. I really like Explosive Light, though. Let me tell you something. I love Explosive Light on rocket launchers and on heavies in particular. Just rocket launchers in particular. I really, really like Explosive Light, especially if you can pair that with a Gallarhorn. Now, of course, only one Chill Cup can work with it, but I'm thinking longer term. I'm thinking ahead to Pantheon stuff. That's why I went so crazy on getting a good Adept Cold Comfort out of the Rite of the Nine activity, is because I wanted to make sure that I had a good one of those. I wanted to make sure I had good power weapons for the future. The only other, I think that's it for the guns that we can talk about. Because I got 3 of them. I missed out on the other 3, and 2 of the 3 are the ones I really wanted. I did want to talk about Whirling Ovation for a second before moving on to the actual, mechanics of the raid. Whirling Ovation it's interesting because I didn't think they were going to do 2 heavies in a row. When you think, and I mean, even if you think back further, 3 of the last 4 endgame activities that they've given us have had a heavy in that slot, or had a power type weapon. I think. God, am I smoking fucking crack right now? I might be smoking crack, guys. Now I'm second guessing myself. Am I? Yeah, no. I'm not crazy. Finality's Augur is a heavy. God, it's been a hectic week over here. It's been a really hectic week. But Whirling Ovation. Coronal culmination. God, tried to say accumulation. Culmination. Coronal culmination. Hold the charge, release the fire. Charge projectiles have a delayed solar payload. Charge speed of this weapon's next shot slowly increases over time. Anticipation builds more quickly as you deal more damage with other weapons. This could be really, really funky. I don't know how much I love it, but I am excited to see it in action. I do wonder how it goes. I have not personally talked to anyone who has used this. I do not know anybody who has this, as a matter of fact. So if they do have it, they have not talked to me about it. So I'm interested to hear people get their hands on this one. I think it's a badass exotic. This thing looks awesome. I think this thing looks absolutely fantastic. I think this looks really cool. This looks like an exotic weapon. It kind of behaves like an exotic weapon too. So I like that delayed burst really makes it feel like Scorch Cannon-ish, even though this is a strand gun. So I am interested to see how that plays out. But let's talk about the encounters of the raid, because as much bitching as I've done about not getting the loot that I wanted, and I've done about contest, I did really love this raid. The first thing you notice when you load in is it's very Leviathan-esque, and it's not the only comparison to Leviathan we've had, right? It's very Leviathan-esque in you can pick which of the 3 encounters you want to go do first. Almost everyone ended up at Hobgoblin, which is hilarious to me. Hobgoblin, to me, isn't super difficult. But on contest, this thing was a pain in the dick, I can only imagine. Because I had a hard enough time remembering the timer on the lasers. You have lasers that are very similar to the Seraph Towers trying to shoot you. You have 10 seconds to get out of their sight to refresh your buff. That can get very chaotic, and I was just doing this at like minus 30 when we did it. I don't remember how much the delta was, but I think it was minus 30. I might have been up to minus 40. But minus 30 or 40 with feats active is totally different than having them active in contest, right? So like the damage is still the same as contest, but you're not facing contestable ads. The damage you're taking is roughly the same. It's a weird situation. I don't hate the Hobgoblin encounter. I actually think it's kind of easy when you think about it. If you're on one team is picking up the corneas or the croniums, whatever you want to fucking call them, from the Minotaurs, and this is a common theme. You're picking those up and you're running them through the portals that you're told to run through. You're running them through the Tony Stark arc reactors, is what you're doing. There's always going to be one that you don't run them through. And then, whoever's been calling that also gets to pop a Vex shield for you that protects you from the burst, and boom, you're doing damage. Yeah, you're doing damage. They call out which Hobgoblin you're doing it to, and you do the damage. And it's just easy. It's just it's simple. The damage really wasn't that bad, and of course, we're doing this not on contest, so I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't that hard right now, but I definitely see how this was a pain in the ass during contest, 100%. I think it's a cool encounter. I fully expect this encounter to be part of Pantheon. I think this encounter in particular is probably the one that's going to be in Pantheon in the spring. I don't think the other 2 of the 3 beginning encounters will be in there, and I really don't think Final Boss will be in there. But I do think this one ends up in there. My guess would be this one and probably encounter number 2 from Salvation's Edge are in the next Pantheon. And I would say the Witness is probably in there also. I think Witness will be in there also. Those would be the 3 encounters I would say will probably be in the next Pantheon for sure. Second encounter that we did was the Hydra. I really like the Hydra encounter. Once you figure out how to read the wall and how to call out what needs to be shot, it's really cool. I think it's a really cool encounter that you do. My problem was staying in front of the fucking light that is revolving around the room, because you have to stay in front of that to do any sort of damage to the Hydra shields. Once you get them all down on your side and on your opponent's side, or your teammate's side, you run out and you all do damage, and everybody gets called forward at some point to shoot off the shields. That I still definitely need some practice on that. That got out of hand a little quickly every time for me. But overall, solidly can do it in 2 phases, even at like minus 30 under. You can still solidly do that in 2 phases. Same with the Minotaurs. Or same with Hobgoblin. You can easily 2-phase this. You just have to be hitting your stuff to extend your DPS phases is all. Third encounter. This is where I got pissed off with the raid for the first time. I actually got pissed off here. It is an encounter with a wyvern, and you're building platforms for somebody to climb up. And there is a desync problem with these boxes. You have to hit them all at exactly the same time, or they don't work. Some people have figured out they need to shoot like 2 seconds before. Some people have figured out they got to shoot it right then. There's a bit of lag whenever you're talking to our voice, of course. It's very frustrating. This is the only time I actually got mad during this raid. And then when I swapped off like 2 or 3 runs later, we had it. Sometimes you just gotta switch up jobs. Sometimes you gotta switch up jobs. And I went to dunking chromiums and doing damage. So sometimes you have to change your strategy. And I really like that about this raid is like it forces you to think about what you're going to run, especially in there. Like everybody else was using Acreus. I was having issues landing the melee that you need to keep proccing the 1-2 punch with Acreus. So I switched back. I cannot believe I'm gonna say this. I went to Thunderlord. I had used Thunderlord for the other 3 encounters, and I've used it here. I ended up clearing every single encounter using Thunderlord, and I usually wasn't at the bottom of our DPS leaderboard. So I felt pretty good about using it. Are there things you could use otherwise? Sure. I could do all these loadout swaps if I really wanted to. And I want to be clear. For some people, doing the loadout swaps is the difference between us doing a 2 and 3 phase, especially on final. That is a big difference. So I will say that. But chicken, you just want to try and burn him. You just want to try and burn that chicken. And I'm pretty sure you can. I think when we finally killed him, we just burned him down. And that was it. We didn't have to go to 2 phases on the chicken. I don't remember if we had to go to 2 or not. I don't recall us having to go to a second phase when we finally did the DPS. Before we get to final, I want to talk about the process of doing the quest. I do like that. You have to clear it first to get this beacon locator, and then you're trying to find like little, not patrol beacons, but like, because there are patrol beacons scattered throughout that you're hitting for lore on Maya and Shioma. But when you find these they're like Vex patrol beacons. That's the best thing I can really compare them to. After you find all 12 of them, you will earn the shader. You'll earn one of the 2 shaders for the raid. I think that's a cool thing to do. I do like the idea of having a quest. I do think that finishing the quest should give you a minuscule chance at getting the exotic, like a minuscule ongoing continuous chance. I will say the hidden chests in this is one of the first times in a raid where I've just like looked at them and I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna go get these every time I come in. I got my triumph, I'm done. I'm not doing this every single time I do the raid. They are a pain in the dick. They're an absolute pain in the dick. I think we spent like 20 minutes on each chest when we did them. Because the things to get them are not in the same place. It's 3 out of 9 symbols that can be lit up. And they're scattered all throughout jumping puzzles. And fuck that. I'm not doing this every time. Maybe if it rewarded me with better loot, I would consider it. But the fact that, you're not even getting like tier 2 loot consistently in a raid is just insane. Why on earth I would ever subject myself to this, I have no idea. But I really, really love Final. I love the final encounter here. Of course, it brings everything together. I had the pleasure of holding down the, I believe, left side. If you come in from spawn, where you're on the left, I think. Had a lot of fun doing that. That was great. Both my runs, really enjoyed that. You're trying to do that. You're trying to, you're running double special. Honestly, I was running a sniper and Lotus Eater for a lot of it. My first run, I was definitely not running a sniper. I was running a pulse there, and I very quickly learned, like, no, you need the sniper for the extra oomph. You can run an SMG in that secondary slot or a sniper in that secondary slot and swap, but man, running double special, if you're not built for it and your teammates are not built for it, is going to be really rough. We were raining special though, so I felt okay with running it. Definitely busted out my my shiny succession that I have from Into the Light. Got some use out of that finally. And then, you ascend these platforms to go do damage, and I thought this was really cool. I think that this whole boss, I love fighting bosses that are larger than life, right? And then you go up and the DPS platform is the boss, and you're shooting directly into its eye. I thought that was really, really cool. All these lasers are going off around, the same lasers you were shooting off while you were down on the ground. I think that's cool. Somebody's constantly paying attention. Somebody else is jumping through hoops. You're popping as many supers as you can. If you're not getting 2 or 3 DPS supers off, like, what are you even doing here? Right? Like, everyone should be popping multiple supers. Everyone should be getting multiple wells or whatever, whatever you're running. I don't think, both clears that we had, we 2-phased it both times. It was a lot of fun. I really, 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 really like that final boss. I think that final boss is just, it's an absolute blast. I'm going to keep saying it. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. Is it the best final boss we've ever had? No, it's not, but it doesn't need to be. Like, it does exactly what it needs to. So all that being taken into consideration, I think it's a pretty solid raid. I know I'm not talking a lot about the encounters, but there's really not a lot to talk about in terms of the mechanics. It's just, it's a very, I think it's an easy to learn raid. It's going to be hard to master. The difficulty comes from the feats. If you're just wanting to go in there, check it out, it's a bunch of DPS checks. And I don't think anybody going in there at 120 light, which is the recommended light, is going to have a problem with this raid. I don't think a single person is going to have trouble doing this. It's mastering the mechanics and doing it with the feats, which I think the feats system is really, really cool. It's really, really special. I don't want this to become like crafting, though, where this is put into every raid. I think it works very good for a raid like this where you can pick your encounters. I don't know if it would work in other raids. I don't know how I'd like it in a King's Fall or in About with the Disciple, for instance. I don't know how I would like it in those types of raids, in a more traditional raid experience. But I do think that this shows a willingness to want to experiment going into this new era of Destiny. And they got like that with Vow, right? I felt like Vow was a little bit of a departure from what they normally do in a raid. Not like a massive one, but it was enough with all the symbols, right? And then Ron felt like a step backwards. As much as we praised Ron at the time. You know, and the more I sit on Ron and stew on it, the madder I get about Ron. Because, yes, we needed an intro-level raid. We did not need it at that point in the game, though. That's something that should have been done, like, right around the time of Deepstone, right? And then we got SE, which, you know, was so mechanic-heavy, and people wanted just a DPS raid. And now they're upset that it's it's largely a DPS raid. Like, yeah, there's mechanics to it, of course, but it's 4 huge damage checks is what it is. And that Hobgoblin is probably the hardest damage check of all. Yeah, the first 3 bosses. So I do like the feats. I think the feats definitely add an extra level of challenge. You can eventually equip, because you have to, in order to unlock more feats, you can do 1, and then when you complete a run with 1 on, you can do it with 2, and you can do it with 3, and then you can do it with all of them, right? That will eventually get you to contest difficulty. That will eventually get you to the contest delta. And I think that's really cool. I think that's one of the harder challenges in the game right now, is to go in and do all the feats together. Like, the people who do that, you are truly one of one. You are truly awesome and elite at this game in a way that I could never ever hope to be. So for right now, I'm very happy with getting my 1 feat runs done. Maybe I'll get bold and try and do it with 2 next time. But I think that's a really cool way to like customize the difficulty. But again, like, I don't want to see this all the time. I think it's very cool for this new era. I don't want to see it coming to everything. Just like I don't, want the Portal stuff necessarily coming to everything. So that's just my personal little quirk about it. Let's get into some questions, though. Before we go and rank the raid, I want to tackle some of these questions that you guys wrote in with. We got a ton of them last night that I decided to go ahead and save. So Fox writes in and says, thoughts on the looks of the raid armor? I'm a slut for fashion and a huge fan of every class for the first time in a long time. I think these armor sets are awesome. I think some are better than others. I largely like the entire Hunter set. That cloak and helmet combo goes so hard. It's very futuristic. It feels very Warframe in a lot of ways. I really love that cloak. I think it's awesome. It feels very Maya Sundaresh. I think it's cool. I would say borderline. I feel like that almost should have been part of the Warlock armor. The Warlock robes might be my favorite individual piece, though. The Warlock robes are elite, especially if you throw a good shader on. It shades good with most everything I've tried it with. Ossified carving goes hard on every single piece of armor from this raid. I really, really like it on the Titan and Warlock helmets and the Warlock robes. Like, specifically, I like it on those 3. I think it works really, really well on those specific... Man, that Warlock helm with it, because you still got the light in the middle, I think the contrast is just so cool when you do something like that. It's good. It is probably my favorite raid armor in a hot minute, because I have to really struggle to think the last time I really liked a raid armor set. The SE set is fine. I don't really remember the Crota set, to be completely frank with you. I don't love the Ron set. I don't love the Vow set is fine. I think the Vow set is fine for Hunters, especially. I kind of like it on Hunters. I like that the armor moved. I thought that was a really cool twist to it. The last set I was like truly in love with, though, and wasn't just like, oh, that's nice. was the Deep Stone Crypt stuff. You guys know I really love the Braytech armor. I love that. I like living up my Blade Runner and Cyberpunk fantasies. Mash that with the Vespers armor. We were cooking. We were cooking, man. So, Dealer writes in, I want thoughts on the layout of the raid. Personal opinion on being able to do any encounter in any order you wish, including just starting final boss instantly and clearing. I love this. I absolutely love that you can pick your order, and I love that you can go straight to the final boss. You actually get special dialogue if you go up and activate the final boss right away. She almost like, wait, what the fuck are you doing? You're going to fight this thing without investigating the other areas? All right, you're a funeral guy. And that's cool. That was my very first clear, was going straight to final boss. That was my first clear. Was clear in quotation marks, was doing that, and then we went back and ran the whole thing basically twice. So I think it's cool. Again, it's something that's cool and works for this particular raid, and I think it works partially because we're in the realm of the 9, right? And I think that, like, the Leviathan was a totally separate space. We're in 3's realm. I think it works. I don't want to see this in every raid, but I think for a strictly, it's not strictly DPS because there are still mechanics, obviously, but for a very DPS focused raid, it's basically 4 War Priests is the comparison I can come up with. It feels like 4 massive DPS checks. I think it works for a raid like this. It does not work in other raids. It would work in something like Vow, I think, where you're exploring a pyramid. It could work there. It didn't work in something like SE, where you're ascending the pyramid, right? Or ascending the spire. You're ascending to get up to the top of the monolith, to fight the witness. I don't think it works in Deepstone Crypt for obvious reasons. I don't think it works in something like Crota's End. You know, raids used to be so much more linear, right? Like, we haven't had an experience where you could do this since Spire of Stars. Vow is the only other one I can really think of that we've had where you could have done something like this. And I think it's been far too long. I like this. I don't want it to be an every raid thing, and I don't think it will be. I feel the same way about feats, which is Dealer's second question. What are thoughts on feats and knowing you have to use all of them to get higher tier weapons and armor, then having to find higher tier weapons and armor before you can focus them? I think this is awesome for the people who want to go in and grind, who live to raid and do the end game. I think that the feats add an awesome level of challenge for trios and for low mans. I love that for that part of the community. And there's nothing that says you have to go do that, by the way. I think I would have less of a problem with the triumphs and the feats being tied to leveling the armor up if it's dropped at a like natural like tier 3 for doing a raid. Because I'm sorry, endgame has always rewarded decent-ish gear. And I think that it should be dropping tier 3 armor and at least tier 2 weapons. That's my personal take on this. I'm going to argue against tier 3 being in an abundance until you do a triumph. And then I think you should get guaranteed tier 3 with the opportunity to get tier 4 or 5. I think tier 5 dropping from this raid should be an aspirational thing. Like, that should be maybe not as rare as the exotic, but like borderline to it. If like your chance at the exotic is normally like 5%, I think chances at getting a tier 5 weapon should be like 10%, maybe. And you can bump that up to like 15 if you do like the entire seal or something. I think that's a way to keep people engaged, but you are risking burning out your grinding player base by making it so hard to get the tier 4 and 5s. Something like a raid, I'm not saying we should hand them out like candy. I suspect that something like Pantheon is going to make them very abundant, similar to how they did with the red borders in the original Pantheon. And I think that tier 5 should be something you're seeking to chase out. For weapons, especially. That should be something you're chasing. When you get to tier 3s, I mean, you're usually getting 2 perks then in each column. And I don't think those should necessarily be handed out like candy either in a raid. But a raid is a more difficult thing to go do. I do think that tier 3 should be much more prevalent in there. And that doing the triumph should guarantee you tier 3 afterwards. But I think not starting with like tier 2 and 3 dropping is a huge oversight. And I think Bungie has to understand that the average player is not going to do this raid more than 1 or 2 times. Most people are going to go in, they're going to get their clear and go, oh, that's cool. And then they might do like boss CP. You don't even have to get a boss CP. You can just like load in and go do the boss 3 times a week with 3 different characters for a shot at the exotic. And I mean, looking at the loot table, like a lot of things drop from that final chest also. It's just, It's rough, man. I do like that the raid is infinitely farmable right away, though, because there's no red borders anymore. It's infinitely farmable, except for the exotic. The exotic, you're still limited to 1 chance per character per week. So I'm okay with that. What I don't like about this is once you unlock like tier 3, for example, you have to go re-earn all that stuff in order to be able to purchase the tier 3 gear from the vendor. I think that's a load of horse shit. I think that's bullshit. As someone who spent 25 runs trying to get a commemoration back in the day, as someone who has 20 plus clears of VOG and has never sniffed the class item, I hate that. I absolutely hate that part of it. We discussed the difficulty of the raid last night from Go Birds. We did discuss that. Dealer had another couple of questions. We did tackle one of Dealer's last night. Should they have delayed the raid with how many bugs were in the game and delayed everything? I do think the raid should have been delayed. I said that at the top of the show tonight. I personally would have delayed the expansion upon realizing that, but I realized that's not a feasible thing to do like 2 weeks out. The marketing plans are made months and months and months in advance. You can't delay that close unless something truly makes the game unplayable. Then you can't delay that. Honestly, the time to delay it would have been months ago, and you wouldn't have known about these bugs then. Sadly, and then we did tackle this question last night in a way, but I didn't really understand what Dealer was asking. This is completely unrelated to the raid. What do you think about still being able to access the Helm and Last City social spaces? You can do this through Fireteam Finder, funny enough. We went in there and we're goofing off this afternoon. You can still get a lot of the dialogue. You can still interact with Spider and with the war table. You can interact with Ido. She's invisible, but you can't get out of the screen then. You have to fast travel back to the Last City. Same with if you try to interact with, there's a couple other things if you try to interact, like the stones in Eris's apartment, but there's still like all the little like lore things you can pick up in there with the dialogue. You can still go pick all that up and see all that in game. I think that's cool. It makes me think they're going to use this space again. I've got some theories on it. Going to save that for the next episode though. And then Titan asked last night also, and we did discuss this, so I want to go ahead and address this again, though, since we're talking about this raid. How likely is it the fact this raid was all bosses inspired by the success of Pantheon? I'd say 100%. 100%. They built this with Pantheon in mind this time. They built this like mechanics, the damage gates, they built this with Pantheon in mind. Because you think about the Pantheon encounters, right? And you had Golgoroth, you had Golgoroth, you had Explicator of Planets, you had Caretaker, you had Atrax, you had Rolk, you had double Rolks, you had Riven, you had Nezi, and oh god, what was the other one you had? Was it Oryx? I think you had Oryx was the other one. I want to say Oryx was the other one. I can't remember off the top of my head, but all big damage checks, right? I already see you possibly doing Witness, doing Second Encounter of SE, and probably Hobgoblin are the 3 that I would point out from the last year that'll probably be in Pantheon 2. I don't think that, like, SEU clearly is not built with Pantheon in mind. I want to be really clear. Like, that's the only real DPS check that there is until you get to Witness, is Second Encounter. That's really the only big combat encounter. So the other, it's a very mechanics heavy raid. This is pretty much the exact opposite in a lot of ways. So this is a very DPS and damage driven and damage focused raid. Not a bad thing. Maybe not the direction I would have gone, but I do think it was a nice change of pace. Again, as long as this just isn't happening all the time. That would be my thing. As long as it's not happening all the time, I'm pretty okay with it. So what's the next one I want to jump to? I think we're done with questions. Yeah, I believe we're done with questions. Let's move on to the raid rankings. Yeah, let's do the raid rankings. So raid rankings, of course, I try to take into consideration where we're at that point in the game. I try to take into consideration my personal feelings on the raid, maybe the loot tables, exotics, memories that I make in the raid. These are completely subjective. I mean, I change them all the time, judging by like how much I've knocked Ron down this year in comparison to previous years. But we have 16 raids to rank. It's 14 raids with 2 raid layers. I am ranking all the Destiny raids. I have to say Destiny raids because Wrath of the Machine still is not in D2, much to my ever loving anger. So number 16, I got Eater of Worlds. You guys can listen to any of the previous raid reviews to learn why I hate Eater of Worlds. At 15 this year, I've got Ron. I've got Ron all the way down to 15. I want to be clear. I do not hate Ron. I hate the lack of challenge in Ron. Nezzy is a complete pushover. I don't think that there's any Explicator. The only time Explicator's ever been challenging, it was in Week 4 Pantheon to me. And even that, I think we crushed it on our second try. I recently watched a clip of our run when we killed Explicator, and it was hilarious to watch. Number 14, I'm gonna put Crota. I really like the new Crota's End in D2, but I'm putting it down here because, again, similarly, I have feelings about it. I have feelings about this, especially the more that I've run Salvation's Edge over the last year. I have a lot more feelings about yeah, Crota basically was like a raid layer. It's basically a raid layer. So Crota, not bad, not great. 13, I've got Spire. I really like Spire. I'm a big fan of Spire. Again, we talk about finicky mechanics. That the passing of the ball was very, very finicky, and then breaking the shield and stuff like that was always weird. Scourge of the Past, I've got a 12. Scourge, I just don't. Scourge has always sat weird with me. I don't know. I like the Berserkers. I like that as a concept. I don't love it, but I do like it as a concept, and I really do like it. I like the Insurrection Prime fight. I think that's a fun fight. I like how they brought tanks into it. At 11, I've got Leviathan. I do have Leviathan down here. Again, I like the choose your own adventure aspect of it, but Callus is just Callus is, yeah, he got burned. He got burned down. At 10, I've got Crown of Sorrow. Again, I largely like Crown. Just third and fourth are either going to take you 20 minutes or you're going to be there for 2 hours, depending on how people understand the mechanics and are actually trying. You can't really handhold in third encounter, which I really like. Everybody has to figure out the mechanics and how to do them. So I do like that. At 9, I've got Garden of Salvation. Garden of Salvation. I don't know if I've moved it up or down or if I've kept it in the same position. It feels like I've moved it up a little. I've done more clears of Garden this year, and I actually have really come to like Garden. It turns out, what do you know? You just needed, you need the right people. You need the right team and people to explain the mechanic to you. Also, being massively overpowered probably helps. At number 8, I've got the Deepstone Crypt. I'll always have a soft spot for Deepstone. The spacewalk is fantastic. It's one of the best interludes in any raid. Of course, Deepstone Lullaby is great. I really like the Atrax fight. Again, another thing that Pantheon made me sit there and go, man, I really like this encounter now. I think Atrax is a blast of an encounter. I like the franticness of third encounter while the spaceship is crashing. I like that. Despite all my feelings about Taniks at the end, I actually really like the majority of this raid. 7, the OG. The daddy of them all, the Vault. The Vault itself. What else can I say about Vault of Glass at this point? 6, I've got Wrath. Wrath of the Machine would probably be a little bit higher on this list. It would probably swap places with my number 5 if I had actually had a full clear of this. I have gotten to Final Stand on the final boss. I've never actually cleared, though. And for that reason, I want to keep it down a peg. I've also, only ever done it once. So I don't feel comfortable putting it any higher than that. But the Death Zamboni. Death Zamboni for life. Then we get into the top 5. At number 5, it's about to fall out of the top 5, man. We get one more good raid, and this raid is finally going to fall in the top 5 for me. King's Fall. Love King's Fall, but it's time. We've evolved so much beyond King's Fall at this point. I still think King's Fall is the pinnacle of D1 content as far as raids go. I say that with the caveat of only having done Wrath one time the week that D2 came out. I do not have vivid memories of Wrath of the Machine, but a lot of people cite Wrath as one of their favorite things ever in Destiny. For me, it's King's Fall. King's Fall is the nostalgic one I keep coming back to. At number 4, I'm putting Desert Perpetual. I'm putting DP at number 2. At number 4, not number 2. Number 4 is where I'm slotting it in. I cannot put it above. I cannot put it into my S tier. It's in the A tier. I cannot put it into the S tier. My A tier is A plus is DP and probably King's Fall. Wrath is A. Vogue is A. DSC, Garden of Salvation, Leviathan and Crown are all Bs. Scourge, Spire, Crota, and Ron are Cs, and then Eater is D, is how I would break it up. You just had a whole episode on why I put Desert Perpetual there. So I think I like the choose your own adventure aspect of it. I love the feats. I can't wait to do more runs with feats. I think it's really cool. What's killing it for me is the gear. The fact that even when you unlock a new gear tier, you have to go re-unlock everything fucking sucks. That fucking sucks. And that is going to impact my enjoyment and wanting to farm this. That really is. But I like that you can go farm whatever encounter you want. If you're chasing a specific weapon, guess what? You can go do that. You can go do that. At number 3, I've got Last Wish. Again, another one that I feel like we've eclipsed it at this point, but man, doing Legit Riven for the first time during Pantheon was an awesome experience. Legit Riven is the best boss in the entire game. I don't even think it's a question. It's the best boss in the entire game. When you do Legit Riven is easy these days, right? The DPS on it is a joke. But when you do Legit Riven and you're calling out the eyes, I think that is such a blast. Do I want to do it every time? Absolutely not. Fuck no. I'm going to take the cheese every single time. But I enjoyed the experience of learning how to do it and actually doing it. That was awesome. And doing it in a high-stakes environment, high-pressure environment was even better. At number 2, I've got Vow. I love Vow. Rolk is maybe my second favorite boss of the entire series. He's my favorite antagonist, I think, in the whole series. A dude who really just like fucked with us until he realized we were about to kill him, and then he like turned on the jets for 10 seconds as he was dying. I think that was awesome. That's an awesome twist. And getting all the lore about Rolk. I still love the design of the weapons. The armor's pretty cool. How you go through the whole raid is like a gigantic jumping puzzle, which is really cool. There's all these fucking symbols. I will forever call Black Garden Utah. That will forever be Utah in my mind. And then, number 1, it's going to take a lot to dethrone this one for me, but as someone who really loves the mechanics and raids and loves puzzles, I love Salvation's Edge. Salvation's Edge is the best thing they've ever made. That is the best Destiny activity they've ever made. It is the best raid, in my opinion. It's the best endgame. It's the best raider dungeon that they've ever made. The only thing that comes close for me is Week 4 Pantheon. Week 4 Pantheon's the only thing that comes close. And even that, that was a fun experience that I did, and I really loved that I did it with friends. But Salvations is just such a unique thing. And a lot of that, you guys have heard me praise it, a lot of it is Verity. Verity is a good chunk of the reason why it's so high. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So there you have it. Those are the 16 raids, man. 16 raids. It's kind of wild to me that the next time that we are talking about raids, we'll talk about epic raids when they come out in September. I'm excited to see what changes come there. There's 4 new triumphs that are going to come with it, including, I think, a multi-part one. I did find it interesting that 2 of the challenges that are on the seal do not actually count towards the seal. That's really weird to me. They just put everything for the raid on the seal page since there's no Desert Perpetual page for some inexplicable reason on Kepler. I'm interested to see what epic raids bring. Is it just going to be Prestige 2.0, or is this going to be a new experience entirely? They said new encounters, which has me really excited for this. Has me really excited. There are 7 loot spots, I believe, in the collections. There's 7 new pieces of gear that are going to come. I would expect it to be a set of armor ornaments and probably a sparrow and a new weapon. I would expect those to be the things, personally. I don't think we're getting another exotic. I'd be very blown away if there was another exotic. So I wouldn't expect another exotic, but I do think that you're probably getting a sparrow because there's no sparrow tied to it right now. I don't even know if there's a ship tied to it, frankly. I think it's just a ghost shell. So you're probably going to get one or both of those, and then you're going to get probably a set of weapon ornaments, would be my guess. Or a set of, not armor ornaments, weapon ornaments, armor ornaments is what I'm trying to say. I think that's probably what you're going to get. But other than that, Pantheon next spring, assuming that it's not dungeon-based, is probably the next time I'll be really getting into raid talk. Other than maybe talking about some low man stuff here and there. Talking about a little bit of the raid community. We're definitely going to keep talking about the cheating controversy that's going on with this raid in particular. Big-ass lights being shined on it finally, and this is finally what's getting Bungie to take some action. So, with that being said, we will see you next time. I don't know when we're going to record next. I don't know if we're going to do one this coming Thursday. Kind of depends on if I can get into Arms Day or not. If I can't do Arms Day stuff, then we'll, do an episode the first real week of August. And we'll just take this next week off. I've enjoyed being able to do weekly shows as of late because we've had so much to talk about. That does seem like it's drying up, though, unfortunately, for reasons we talked about last night regarding seasonal content. God, I can't bring myself to talk about Portal right now. I don't want to talk about Portal stuff and activities that we talked about ad nauseum anymore. So, with that being said, I'm Josh. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see y'all next time.